Panther people, what up? Do you want to be an NFL scout? I talked to a guy who made his dreams come true. What's going on? You're watching Panthers Post. Thanks for joining. We are less than a month away from the NFL draft in Green Bay, and I cannot wait. This draft just feels different. It feels different because the Panthers have something they haven't had since Cam Newton, and that is a quarterback, a mainstay at the quarterback position that we can just focus on other things: wide receivers, safeties, edges, defensive tackles, running backs, tight ends. Everything is great. It's great. Imagine you're in this situation right now. We have to choose from Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, and Jackson Dart. That's it. That's what you got. Instead, we got Bryce Young. And I feel good about it. Even though they definitely need more weapons to help this guy out, but I feel good. This draft feels different. Our general manager is laser focused. He's still got the crazy eyes. He's not sitting back and doing nothing. So with that, Dan Morgan obviously relies on his own linebacker crazy eyes, but also the eyes, the ears, the gut of his area scouts and his pro scouts to see like what they have and don't have on the roster right now. And I talked to a guy who did that for 4 years at the highest level in the National Football League with the New York Jets during the time of, you may have heard of him, Bill Belichick. This man was handpicked, signed, sealed, confirmed by Bill Belichick himself, arguably the greatest football coach of all time. He also shared the building with one Bill Parcells, who was a Bill Belichick mentor. His name is Daniel Kelly. Now, you might have seen him on Twitter, some of his takes on Twitter at First Round Mock. He works at First Round Mock right now. He says certain things that might piss off certain fan bases, like Caleb Williams is a bust, that he's a 7th round pick, that he might get benched this year. But he also says some pretty nice things about Bryce Young. And so, very lovely to talk to Daniel Kelly from Key West in Florida. He talked to me about the inception of his dream to be an NFL scout, how he then became that, made that dream a reality. Now, this was in the 90s, so things are a little different now. We have, the internet's in the palm of your hands and your watch. He, worked on tape. He had to like print out scouting reports, stuff like that, got phone calls, got pages. So the landscape is a little bit different now. And if anything, it's probably more competitive to become a scout in the NFL from somebody who never played in the NFL or anything like that. Just to become a scout, it's a tall task. But this guy made it happen. You, me, everybody here thinks they watch enough college football, thinks that they watch enough all 22, and they could scout players. This guy did it for a living. So if you want to be an NFL scout or you want to do anything really with your life, listen to this show. It's around 17 minutes long, which is longer than normal. But listen to this. Listen to his story, whether you agree with his takes or not on prospects. It is pretty awesome. Daniel Kelly, talk to me. People watching this, like me, we're kind of wannabe scouts. We purchased the All-22. We watch enough film. We watch enough college football. We think we know what we're doing. But you actually got paid by an NFL team to be a scout. Kind of walk us through it. How did you become a scout?
Well, it was an incredible process. I fell in love with the game back when I was 8 years old with the Washington Redskins. Growing up in Minnesota, was love at first sight, and just became a Redskins fanatic growing up in the Twin Cities there in Minnesota. And I wanted to play football, but of course I didn't get big enough. I took the weight gainer 2200, ate a bunch of large pizzas, had a dream of playing linebacker at Penn State. I actually ended up getting a chance to play my junior year in high school. I was the guy that had, I didn't have enough playing time to even earn a leather jacket. That's how bad I was. They had me on like way of the far bench, kind of like a, Rudy before his time. And I was sitting out there, and coach said, I think we were down like 45-0 to this team. And coach said, "Hey, Kelly, get in there." And my teammate said, "That's you." I said, "Hey, yeah. Me?" So I ran in there, and I was just hoping they're going to run out the clock, but of course not. They didn't, and the quarterback dropped back, and I was playing free safety, so I could see his shoulders start to tilt, and I knew the ball was going deep, and I just remember looking up and the ball coming down, and it literally went right through my hands, hit my face mask, and bounced on the ground. So that counted as a PBU, pass defended there.
All right,
so that was
it's all good.
So, but that was my claim claim to fame, playing football. I wasn't any good at it. For my 17th birthday, my parents gave me a book, Tony Rosano's Secrets of NFL Scout. Of course, Tony Rosano was the director of player personnel for the 49ers under Bill Walsh. He was the guy that convinced Walsh to draft some guy named Joe Montana.
I've heard of
Whereas,
him. Yeah.
yeah. Whereas Walsh wanted to draft a guy named Steve Dills. Fortunately for 49ers fans, it worked out, with Montana instead of Dills. But the book, I couldn't put it down. It was love at first sight, just like the game was itself. I said, this is what I want to be. I want to be an NFL scout. So I started recording all these games, writing reports. I kind of self-taught myself how to do it, and sending all these scouting reports to Charlie Casserly, who was then the GM of the Washington Redskins. Asking Mr. Casserly if I could become an intern. He's like, hey, you're still too young. Check back after your first year of college. And I just had this passion inside me. So it was funny because I was like 21 years old. I had failed out of a small community college, and I was sitting at Allstate Insurance in Minnesota, in the city, right outside the city. And I was telemarketing for insurance leads, right? And all of a sudden this ad comes on the radio, on KFAN radio in Minnesota, saying, hey, the first 32 callers call in now. You can represent a team on the air, be a mock draft, bring a friend, we'll have lunch. So, of course, I had 9 open phone lines, Philip. So I started dialing like a wild man, right? They say, hey, congratulations. You're the second caller. You're going to represent the expansion team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was a 95 draft. Is it bring a friend, stuff. So I brought all my old scout reports, I tried to, get in with Casserly with, just in case, maybe I see somebody, maybe I don't, maybe I do. Walked in there, scared. I was scared of public speaking, believe it or not, back then. And, walked up to the microphone, up at KFAN radio, and they said, okay, with the second pick in the 1995 NFL draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select. And I leaned into the microphone. I said, Tony Boselli, offensive tackle at USC.
Wow.
Yeah. And so in the corner of my eye, I saw Tony Dungy. He was the defensive coordinator at the time of the Minnesota Vikings. So that's before everybody, before he became famous, everybody knew him. So I walked up to him. I mean, I was, hey, take the shot, right? So I walked up to him, all my old scouting reports. And I said, Coach Dungy, would you please be willing to take a look at these? I have it's an extreme passion for the game. I love scouting. And so he looked at the reports, and he started looking to me. He said, this stuff is actually pretty good. He goes, how do you feel about coming to my office? Maybe next week we could sit down and talk, and I could pull all my old reports at Blesto from when I was with the Chiefs, and we could compare notes. I was like, hey, done. I didn't know if I had any more sick time left, but I found the time.
Who cares?
Who cares? Yeah. So I went into, turned out to be a 6-month unpaid internship with Coach Dungy. I learned a lot about, the game. He had me do some scout reports. He introduced me to one of his friends, Mark Tressman at the time. And, just started
coaching the CFL.
Yeah. Started communicating with him, and then I went back to the real world. Went back to selling Kirby vacuum cleaners. Tony Dungy left for Tampa Bay. I went, back to the vacuum cleaner sales, the door to door, and I was sitting at 24 years old, Philip, at Bank America Mortgage as a loan officer, and I'm like, what am I doing here? My dream is to be an NFL scout. So all these ideas start coming to my mind. Hey, you got a little satellite dish. You can, subscribe to the college football package. You just go for it. I stopped at Target, bought a bunch of pens and paper, started recording games, and lo and behold, that turned out to be like a stack of like folders and reports, and I was like, I got to a point where I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to organize this stuff? And one night I was watching, it was like 2:00 in the morning. I lived in a real rough area of town, northeast Minneapolis. And one night this special comes on ESPN. I'm eating pizza rolls at like 2:00 in the morning. I was getting like 2-3 hours sleep a night. I was, working all day at the bank as a loan officer, moonlighting all night as a scout, putting together all these reports. And this special comes on TV, about Wayne Corbett, undrafted free agent, how his dad tried to help his son land an opportunity. And he sent all his highlight tape to all the teams in the league. I said, that's it. I've never, I always tried to get in with Washington, but I've never tried to get in with the other teams. That's what I'm going to do. So I started telling my buddy at the bank the next day about the idea. And he's like, hey, try to get your work self-published. I'm like, how do you do that? He goes, call some publishers in town. So I started, and one guy liked the idea, and he brought me in, Philip, and he said, I really like what you're trying to do here. It's going to cost $2,300. We're going to, it's be about a 350-page book, and it's going to take about 8 trees to do this. And next thing you knew, I had 3 copies of this book, and I used even next month's rent to pay for it. It was 4th down. Wave the punter off the field. Let's go. And so I 3 copies copies of each of these books, and I had each book personalized for every general manager, director of player personnel, and head coach in the NFL. Went an extra step and got a $1,300 account with Airborne Express and packaged these books together because I've always believed that it's important to separate from the competition. It's got, so here comes this big package. It's like 8 pounds in a box. It says attention Bill Parcells on it. And so I sent these books. I load up my Chevy Blazer. I have pictures of it in my book I wrote, whatever it takes. I loaded up the Chevy Blazer and had all these boxes and no guarantees, and sent 3 copies out of my book to, with all these 1998 scouting reports in and grades to every team in the league, north, south, east, west, sat back, waited, got a alphanumeric pager, waited to see, who would, all my buddies at the bank were like, did anybody call yet? Did anybody call? They were all excited. And all of a sudden my pager went off. It said, please call the New Orleans Saints, Bruce Lillerman, college scouting director. So I was like, hey guys, everybody's on the phone. They're like, what happened? I was like, the Saints are calling, and so I ran into a conference room. All my friends got off their calls at Bank of America, ran in with me. I got, Bruce Lillerman on the phone, who was the college scouting director for the Saints at the time. He said, hey, listen, just want to let you know, this is when Mike Ditka was the head coach of the Saints. Just want to let you know that Coach Ditka really likes your book. Just remember, we were the first team to call you. We have a position open for a Midwest scouting position. Is that something you think you'd be interested in? I'm like, yeah,
Midwest, hell yeah, you're there.
Absolutely, I'm there. Who dat?
Yeah.
I'm there. And so, we left that phone call. And I was like, okay, this is it, and I'm all excited. And then like 2 weeks go by and he calls back, and I run in there all excited, ready to get the invitation to New Orleans. And he's like, hey, it's Bruce here, Lerman, Saints. He's like, listen, one of our senior scouts took a look at your reports and disagreed with some of them. And I'm sorry, based on that, we're not going to be able to move forward with any kind of job opportunity or interview. And I'm just sitting there like,
that must suck.
The channel went off the air, and I'm like, okay, well, thank you, Mr. Lerman. I really, and I got off that call. My buddies were just like, they could see how crushed I was. And my buddy at the bank, they kind of told me I should get that book published. He's like, hey, hang in there. He's like, somebody's going to call you with as much passion, if not more passion, than Mike Ditka. I'm like, I said, you are my friend. I said, I appreciate that. I do. But, sure they are. Well, 2 days later, Philip, my pager goes off again and says, please call Scott Pioli at the New York Jets. It had, 516-560, I think it was 8100, 81.
I'm going to call that after this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they moved from Hempstead, so you won't get them anyways. Yeah. But anyways, and so I dialed the phone, and I didn't even know how to pronounce his last name. Okay. So I called the Jets. I was like, who's your pro scouting director? Like, Scott Pioli. I'm like, okay, thanks. And I waited about 5 minutes. I call back. I said, Scott Pioli's office, please. And so I get him on the phone. He's like, listen. He's like, we really like what you're doing here. We really like the book. Bill really liked it. We have a position open in our pro scouting department. It's not a high paying gig. It's it's an entry level to start with, pro personnel assistant. You'd come in and kind of, cut your teeth on the stuff. And is that something you think you'd be interested as far as getting your foot in the door? And I'm like, absolutely. Mr. Peele, he goes, call me Scott. He goes, my dad's Mr. Pioli. I said, okay, Scott. I said, absolutely. So they actually faxed over a personality profile test, I had to complete all these questions, everything. I sent it back. Now I'm starting to think to myself, hey, listen, I don't have a suit yet, right? I'm thinking to myself, so I go into the Mall of America. I'm running around, the stores are closing. All of a sudden my phone goes off. It says, my pager, please call Scott Pioli. I call him. It's like 10 minutes to 6 on a Sunday night. All the, stores are half closed. And he says, hey, listen, Dan, he goes, Bill's ready to go move forward with you. And I was like, okay. He goes, when can you get your next day off? I'm thinking, I don't have a suit. I'm thinking, how about a week? He goes, Bill doesn't want to wait that long. I said, well, I could get tomorrow morning. He goes, great. I'll have an e-ticket waiting for you at the Twin Cities airport. We'll have dinner tomorrow night. Can't wait to meet you.
Wow.
Fantastic. Boom. And so
Bang.
I run into a men's clothing store, and thankfully all the guys like football there, and they're all like, "Hey, we'll help you out." So I got all fit with a suit, and away I went to New York for a 2-day whirlwind interview. With I recognized every name on the door walking down the door, the hallway. It was just incredible. I mean, Romeo Cornell and Todd Haley and Eric Mangini and Charlie Weiss and Dick Haley and all the Bill Belichick and
Yeah.
Bill Parcells, and I'm just walking, seeing all these names. It was just Dan Henning, all these names up and down the hallway. It was just incredible, and it just turned out to be a 2-day amazing interview. Interviewed at breakfast with Mike Tannenbaum, talked about the salary cap stuff and all that, what I knew about it, and it was just incredible. And then they sent me back to back to Minnesota. They said, okay, well, it's kind of crazy because the interview itself, it came down to me sitting across from Bill Belichick, convincing him to hire me.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was
How are you
intense.
not pissing your pants?
It was crazy. It was crazy.
Well, I guess he wasn't Bill Belichick we know now.
Well, it's still, I grew up watching this guy. I mean, I watched him with the Giants with the Umbrella Zone and Parcells and Lawrence Taylor and all that stuff back in the day with the Meadowlands. And so, so the last part of my interview, they had me write up a player, Rick Lyle, as part of my last part of my interview, maybe just to see if I was actually doing the work or, watching the film, or it was just something kind of unexpected. So I wrote the report and I called Scott Pioli and I said, okay, I have the report done. He said, I want you to bring 3 copies of that report into my office, please. And so I printed them. I was ready to print it, and right when I hit ready to print, in the door walks Bill Parcells into the room, and he said, I mean, just like let's see how this guy responds to pressure, right? So Bill Parcells walks. He goes, "Hey, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Coach. I'm Bill Parcells." I said, I know who you are. I said, respectfully, you're the guy they dumped Gatorade over your head. The guy laughed and chuckled. He goes, hey, just want to wish you the best of luck here in your interview. Hopefully we'll see you around here sometime. And that was it. And I was just like, oh, wow. And so I went to the printer after that and printed up the 3 copies of the report and walked into Scott Pioli's office. It's just like, the draft, the draft day thing with Kevin Costner, the big office overlooking the practice field, the big fluorescent yellow goalposts. And he says, Scott says, have a seat here, Dan. And he picks up the phone and says, okay, he's in here. And he hangs up. I'm like, oh, wow, who's he going to invite in here next? I'm like, and in the door walked Bill Belichick. Wow. So Coach Belichick sits down at a chair, to my left. I'm at the chair to the right in Scott's, desk. And Belichick starts by asking, he says, so tell me, Dan, tell me about your tape collection, about your tapes and everything, all the different games you recorded. I told him all about the games I recorded and everything else. And they said, okay. And then they, took the, 2 copies of the report. I handed one to Bill. Scott kept one, gave one to me. And, all of a sudden they're looking at this report and, it seemed like time itself just stopped. And, Bill kind of looked at it and he said, okay. And he took off his readers, his little, cheaters, glasses readers he had on. He said, okay, this is what we asked Rick Lyle to do in our system. We're in a base 3-4. We, Rick's a dependable veteran. We had him in Cleveland. He's a guy that can hold the point while the linebackers scraping and make plays for us. He's a guy we can count on, rely on. We know what we have in him. And he starts going on about this stuff. And then he goes, so, he's some other small talk. And then he just locks eyes with me. And he says, and neither one of us blinked. We're sitting there staring at each other. Coach Belichick at me, and he goes, what would an opportunity mean to you in the NFL, Dan? And I locked eyes with him and I said, Coach Belichick, it would mean everything to me. I will do whatever it takes to succeed here. And we just sat there and he just, stared at each other for about another 30 seconds saying nothing. And then he said, okay, well, thank you for coming out to New York.
Duh. What does that mean?
Yeah. And so I went back to Minnesota. Another couple weeks went by. All of a sudden, the phone call came in. It's, 516-560-8200 again, or 8280. That's what it was. 8280. And, it's Scott. And I picked up the phone. He said, hey, Scott here. He goes, Bill's reached a decision on you. And, and my first wife was with me at the time, and I'm standing there, I'm listening to this, and he's like, Bill's reached a decision on you. He goes, First, a couple things. He goes, number one, it's not a high paying position. He goes, I was able to get 21,000 a year approved for you. He said, it's not a lot. He said, but I will also throw in, a Hofstra meal ticket, meal cards. You can get me lunches every day. There's a couple season tickets we can put in there for you. He said, again, now overtime's not optional in the NFL. Scott said it's mandatory. He said, so this could be really hard on a new marriage. He goes, you're newly married and stuff, and you're young. He said, this could be really hard. And so if you need some time, he goes, Bill would like to do this with you. And I would too. He said, but if you need some time to think about this, I'm like, I don't need any time, Scott. I said,
No, this is it.
he goes, is that, are you accepting the offer? So I said, absolutely. And he says, congratulations. You're the newest member of the New York Jets. And at that moment, it was just like, surreal. I just started crying. I was, first person I called was my grandma, who always supported my dream from the time I was a little kid, and she was the first person to give me a little John Riggins, T-shirt with 44 screen print on the front and back, and stuff. And so I called her and told her the news, and that was it.
So that was Daniel Kelly talking with me about how he became a scout. Honestly, after I had that conversation with him, I literally just wanted to quit my job and become an NFL scout. Like it's crazy. It's crazy out there. It made it seem like it's somewhat obtainable. Like all of us wish that we could be something like that. Just, wear team colors. Maybe it's not the Carolina Panthers. Maybe the Baltimore Ravens gave you a shot and just rocking the team gear. They're just walking around and, you see Ozzie Newsom's picture on the wall, stuff like that, just to be part of the team. Football is a team game and you're a part of that machine. It just fired me up. All right. So thanks again to Daniel Kelly. Make sure you follow him at First Round Mock. If you're still watching, check out my next video when he breaks down Bryce Young.